Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Deontay Wilder's made some very interesting statements about his weight. He needs more of it, and he's saying in some of his statements that he believes more weight, more power. So that got me thinking when I read these comments, which I'll get to and I'll add some thoughts to. Is he saying he needs more knockout power? Because that's coming across loud and clear in his comments. He's saying if he gets to 245 pounds, and that's always been his target weight according to him, that he's going to have man strength power. 245. Deontay Wilder hasn't weighed close to that. His career heaviest weight is 229 pounds. And we're going to get to some of this because there's certainly a few interesting threads to talk about. Deontay Wilder in his most recent fight, 212 and change. So to get to 245, he'd have to stack on 30 plus pounds. He revealed before the Fury fight on fight night, he weighed 209 pounds. So you take that into account, that's 36 pounds that he wants to stack on ahead of a rematch. He is saying that potentially it's not possible to get to that weight, but we'll get to his comments first and then to some thoughts. Okay, so this story here from Boxing Scene, Wilder will add weight for Fury rematch, targets 245 pounds. The first bit, we've kind of got through some of that just through my general comments. Yeah, we're going to adjust the weight. We're going to do a lot of things, you know, especially with the weight, because these guys have outweighed me the majority of my career. You know, I've never worried about the weight because I have the power to substitute for it. I have devastating power that these guys don't have. So I've never worried about the weight because I felt like the weight is just an image. At the end of the day, how many times over and over again have guys outweighed me and they were left on their back? None of them could put me on my back, being so light of a fighter. That'll just tell you everything. These guys can't put me on the ground, but I can put them on the ground, and I know that. So I'm going to just jump in here quickly. I'm actually seeing this narrative of Deontay Wilder being the lighter fighter compared to his opponents quite a bit recently, since the Tyson Fury fight. What does his weight have to do with it? It's heavyweight. There is no weight limits. You know, plenty of guys who were the smaller man have knocked out guys who were the bigger man. I don't understand what, you know, his weight being the lighter guy has to do with the price of fish. At the end of the day, it's his choice what he weighs. He can't influence his opponent. At the end of the day, there is no weight limit. So if some guys want to come in 230, 240, 250, or in Jarrell Miller's case, 317 pounds, that is on them. That's their choice. They've decided to target whatever weight they're coming in at. Or alternatively, they haven't trained hard enough and they haven't been able to get to shape where they want to be. Often you hear guys coming in at 260, 270, and they would have rather have been 250 because that's more of an ideal weight. So this whole thing of being the lighter fighter, so what? So what? What does it matter? It doesn't actually matter anything. There's a weight minimum at 200 pounds and everything over that, well, that's just how it is. That's the heavyweight division. So this whole narrative of, you know, oh, he was lucky that he was 40 pounds lighter because if he was just as heavy, he would have knocked him out so devastating. And it's like, well, he chose to come in that light. And if he's saying his weight's always been 245 pounds, why is he working his way backwards, you know, down from his career highest over the past 3 years than rather going up to the weight that he says he wants to weigh? I mean, how does that make sense? Okay, so I'll pick it up again. Just because of my team want me to do it. And we work as a team. So me and Shelley talked about this, and of course, I'm going to do what I want to do. But I went back and said, you know what? If you all want to see certain things, then I'm going to give it to you. I'm never the one that's just solely sold on what I want to do. There's certain things, but we work as a team, and we've been working for this long, and it's adjustments to be made. I'm willing to do that just to see. Then it talks about Wilder weighing in at his career highest, 229 pounds for Eric Molina in June 2015. So that's his highest weight. He's weighed 229 pounds twice, and a couple of other times he's weighed 228. But Molina, that was his highest weight almost 4 years ago. My goal was always to be 245. That's what my goal has always been. But somebody's got to get hurt. if weight brings big man power and I already had the power and the speed, somebody's going to get hurt. So if people want to see me put on weight and someone get hurt, then so be it. But you never want to see no one like Adonis Stevenson. I'm always thinking about him, and I tell people all the time, we risk our lives in the ring. We risk our lives, and I know I have the power to hurt anyone. Anyone. So those statements there, he's saying, okay, I'm willing to listen to my team, who've clearly advised him he needs to be at a higher weight. And in the beginning of his career, when he was turning pro, it's well documented that his team wanted him to bulk up to get to a more weight that he could handle the rigors of the division. And over time, he rose up from his career, debut of 207 pounds to eventually he was obviously 229 pounds. And you could see the transition. He went from being more stringy and bean Polish to, a guy that looked like a bit of a light bulb, pretty heavy on top with muscle, heavily muscled in the sort of upper, body area. But now he's, over the last couple of years, and if we just have a look at the record here, we can see he's been working his way down. So Eric Molina here, 229, and then 228 Duopa, 228 Spilka, 226 Areola, 222 Gerald Washington, 220 Berman Stavern, 214 Luis Ortiz, and at the time we were told he'd been sick in his training camp, and that was the explanation given. But I'm not so convinced now, because obviously we had a 212 for Tyson Fury, and there was no explanation why he had continued at the lower weight. But obviously, if his team is telling him, you need to put some weight on here, we want to see you heavier for the rematch, clearly they're saying, you're too light. You're too light, and we need to make an adjustment. We want to see you come in more heavily muscled, with a bit more beef on you. And from what Wilder was saying as well, going back to his comments here, if weight brings big man power, and I already had the power and the speed, somebody's going to get hurt. So if people want to see me put on weight and someone get hurt, then so be it. He is saying if he brings more weight, he's going to have more power. And, you can read between the lines here that they're saying that they want to see him at the heavier weight because they believe he will have more power, and obviously that they believe that he'll have more knockout power. And I guess, with the whole Tyson Fury situation, fans are debating, did he knock Fury out? Was it a long count? All that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it wasn't, so concussive that Fury couldn't get up. The first knockdown in the 9th round, it didn't look like a heavy knockdown. The 12th round, much more heavier, but Fury, he was up by 5 or 6, getting up in the count, and he ended up beating the count by referee Jack Reese. So perhaps looking at this and what's happened, they know that Tyson Fury is probably going to come in a bit sharper the next time. They're obviously, the game plan is put some more weight on Deontay Wilder and give him some more power. So clearly, with Deontay Wilder's power at the moment, it's good. It's very good. He's got, almost all knockouts in his career. Weight hasn't really been an issue before, but clearly if he's talking about it now, that his team is telling him you need to bulk up, then clearly it's been identified as an issue, and an issue that they want to rectify for the next fight. But in terms of a rematch and getting to 245 pounds by, May or June, if they can get this fight made, I just don't see it happening. And Wilder, he's in here a bit realistic about it, saying maybe it's not possible, but he is going to come in heavier for the second fight. I would think where he's coming from 212 pounds, or according to him, 209 pounds on the night, that maybe we could see him between 220 and 230. But then you have to ask yourself the question, what is the trade-off? So if he believes he's going to get more power, and remember, he knows what it was like to be 229 pounds. So having the extra 20 pounds or so on him, he knows what it's like and what his body will do and respond like being at that heavier weight. But if they go any further, that is uncharted territory, and we have seen with other fighters in recent years. Anthony Joshua, he comes to mind. He looked pretty good in the 240s. He went up to 254, and he looked slower and a bit more sluggish. And a guy like Joseph Parker was the same. When he was in the 230s, he looked sharper. He went up to 245. The timing wasn't quite there, and certainly the power gains that they expected didn't materialize. So there can be a trade-off if you want to go to a higher weight, because sometimes the speed can be affected, sometimes the timing can be affected, and maybe the power gains that he's expecting, maybe there's diminishing returns too. Naturally he's a powerful guy, But just adding on more weight, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be so much more of a harder puncher. I just have a little trouble visualizing him just, stacking on an extra 20 pounds and then becoming so much more powerful. I mean, it's hard to say because we haven't seen it yet, so we don't know. But even if he was to get to 245, the questions I would have is, what effect on his performance would being at 245 have? We know he can, compete very well between 220 and 230 because that's largely been his wheelhouse for his championship reign. More recently, a little bit lighter, but he still managed to get the job done, punch guys hard, and they've managed to fall down. More recently with Fury, he didn't get knocked out, but clearly his team has said, we need to do something about this. But 245, that strikes me as being maybe a bit on the high side. I think his body could handle that in terms of the weight, but what's the response going to be? And when he was at 229, as I mentioned earlier, he looked like a bit of a light bulb because he's got very spindly legs. So if he's going to 245, is he going to sort of put a bit more emphasis on his legs, or is it all going to the upper body? Because often boxers, when they do bulk up, there does seem to be a bit of a disproportionate sort of amount of that new bulk going upstairs. Anyway, yeah, that's interesting because is it an admission that he needs more power, that he didn't have enough power for this fight with Fury? And that's the question that I'd like to ask you. Are they saying, look, we kind of miscalculated here, he should have come in heavier, and as a result of coming in at the lower weight, maybe he could have done better if he had been heavier? Let me know. Deontay Wilder, he's also saying that he would love for the Barclays Center to host the Fury rematch. So he's saying, it doesn't really matter, but I would love either Vegas or New York. Vegas or Barclays, Barclays has shown me a lot of love. New York has welcomed me with open arms. So, whatever makes sense. I'm all about what makes sense. Whatever's going to generate the most dollars, I'm ready to go. At this point, whatever makes sense, I'm going to go. And Showtime's Stephen Espinoza has said, personally, I think New York City would be incredible for a rematch. Barclays Center has always supported Wilder, and Brett Yormack, he's from the Barclays Center, the chief executive, is a passionate advocate and one of the best marketers in the sport. I think Barclays would add a lot to the event. And I guess this is the situation, the territory that the negotiations for a rematch is sort of starting to enter. Where do they go? Because if it makes more sense in the United States in terms of money, it may just stay in the US. But obviously there would be a stadium event in the United Kingdom because they would sell a stadium at this point, given what's happened and the obvious interest for a rematch. But where do you think it should go? Do you think they should maybe go to the United Kingdom, have that bigger event, generate more interest for themselves, potential winner-take-all versus Anthony Joshua, or are they building to a trilogy here? What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.